Hi, my name is Parmesh Shahani, and I wear different hats. My first hat is that I work for a company called Mahindra Mahindra out of India. This is a multi-business, multi-billion-dollar conglomerate that makes everything from cars to tractors. It has financial companies, it has software companies, it works with property. It works with media, and so I work across the group on a range of efforts. My official title is Head of Vision and Opportunities, Incubation Lab.
That's such a cool title.
It's a cool title.
What areas that you work in?
I chose the title myself because my role, my profile in the company wasn't, it didn't exist, and I wanted to work across a bunch of fields. And that's essentially what I do. I spend a lot of time with our venture capital fund. We have a small venture capital fund which looks at investing in a range of businesses, primarily that have some significance to India, and to which we as a conglomerate can add value.
To India meaning culturally, or the industry that India is focused on?
To the Indian business scenario, because Mahindra has been operating for more than 60 years in India and now increasingly across the world. But since we're rooted in India, we really understand the business landscape in India.
I see.
So as a corporate VC, we'd really like to fund companies to which we can add value, and we believe we can add significant value if it comes to operating within India. So, and we've done a couple of investments. They've been all over the world. In fact, our first company that we invested in is a Boston-based company called Locomoda, which creates platforms for cell phones to connect with screens in different spaces, both public and private.
Can you give me an example? What do you mean?
Well, it's essentially, there's all these different screens that are coming up, either in hotels or in bars, or in different public spaces like in Times Square. We're moving into this.
Oh, and the platform is for the mobile phone, to
for people with mobile phones
connecting to those
to connect to those screens, to interact with each other, maybe to play games, to send messages to each other.
Right.
It's what the founder of the company calls the web outside, meaning that the internet will soon move out of the confines of devices and just become something that exists all around us. So, this is just one example of one company that we invested in. We've invested in animation companies. We've invested in travel portals. We've invested in a company that makes lamps for for villages in different countries all over the world. So it's a wide range of companies. So that's just that's one aspect of what I do. I also work on different kinds of innovation. I work on different kinds of culture, and as companies out of India now become global, they take with them their sense of what it means to be Indian in other parts of the world. So just different stuff like that.
I understand. In your presentation, you mentioned that you have invested or have a website that deals with is it?
Well, no, it's not something that we've invested in. But, I was just talking in my presentation about a whole range of things that I feel make India very exciting.
Oh, I see. Right.
So one of the examples that I gave
was
a marriage website, which actually and I mean there's been a great boom in marriage websites, because obviously marriage is like the big obsession in India. If not amongst people who are getting married, certainly amongst their parents. And so there are a whole bunch of websites which are doing very, very well, which have also gone offline into offline stores or offline locations where people who are not so internet savvy can actually come and be guided. So that's just the example I gave.
Right, I see. So for some people who don't know India much, what are some of the hot areas or companies in India?
Well, at this point, it's in the Indian economy is doing very, very well. So almost everything is booming. But within the stuff that I look at, which is media, which is new media, and which is culture, I think there's one has to. It's a wide open space for all kinds of experimentation right now, and all kinds of experimentation is happening. So I don't know if it's
Can you give me some
in terms
examples?
of hot area or not. Mobile is obviously hot because in terms of usage, right? There's over I think 250 million cell phone users, growing at the rate of millions every year. So obviously anything to do in the cell phone space would be very hard, simply because there's such a dramatic growth in the subscriber base. I believe that the internet is very interesting, but people really haven't used opportunities. Obviously, things that have done well on the internet are value-based things like jobs or marriage, but there are still so many other opportunities which are coming up. For example, there are city guides which are coming up, which are quite interesting. There's a company called burp.com, which does great city guides. There are specific niche-based online-offline communities. There's one called Pagal Guy, which focuses only on MBAs. That's it. It focuses on people who want to get into MBA school, people who are in MBA school, and people who passed out of MBA school.
Oh, really?
That's it, But it already has, I believe, over 200,000 registered members and over 1.2 million posts on their forums.
Wow.
Right? So even within the niche, it's a big enough niche. Because lots of people in India want to do their MBA.
Right.
So I think that and there's enough space for all kinds of experimentation if you can find out something that actually fulfills the real need.
So one last question: for some of those international companies, like the likes of Facebook or MySpace, how are this kind of companies penetrating India? What's your take on that?
They're doing very well. MySpace actually launched officially in India about, I think, 4 months ago. This is something that's also very interesting. A lot of these companies are being part of creating ecosystems. For example, as I was telling you earlier, I wear different hats. Another hat that I wear is I work with a bunch of magazines, such as Rolling Stone India, such as Verve, which is a fashion magazine, and Man's World, which is a men's lifestyle magazine. So MySpace, something like Rolling Stone, which we launched recently. There is something called Blue Frog, which is a record label as well as a physical venue for performance. There's so many different elements which are coming about and actually creating a music ecosystem.
How are those international brands customizing for the Indian market? Like, for example, Rolling Stone, or
Correct.
you're saying MySpace launch in India.
Yeah.
Like in Canada, we have a situation where magazines, the U.S. magazines, will come to the Canadian market. Yeah, right. The only thing they change is the ads.
Correct.
The content is identical. So how's that situation in India?
No, in India, for anything to work, it has to be very, very local. And all brands are finding out. Whether it's McDonald's, which is finding out with burgers, whether it's Nike, which found out with sports, and they've been really, really clever off late of associating with cricket, which is a national passion. Whether it's something like
so Nike would like in
our magazine,
India would be focusing on cricket.
On cricket in a very, very strong way.
Right.
On football in a strong way where football is important.
Right.
But certainly not on athletics, because that's not a big thing in India.
Right.
Our magazine, which is which came from an iconic American magazine.
Right. Rolling Stone. Right.
Rolling Stone.
Yeah. So in that case,
is actually helping create a music ecosystem in India. So it's getting down. It's doing a lot of live events. It's promoting a lot of Indian artists in terms of content mix. We take a lot of stuff from the international editions, but we create a lot of original stuff from India, whether it's focusing on new and upcoming artists, whether it's our own lists, whether it's reviews of a range of stuff out of India. We're very, very aware of the fact that we are, in some sense, pioneers. We're helping create a music culture.
Right, so it's not just the magazine itself,
No.
it's everything that goes with it.
Yeah.
and it's like you're saying, it's an ecosystem.
And so we are building this ecosystem, along with all the other players. The other thing is, and that's what is, it's as true of, say, our magazine audiences as it's true of Indian consumers in general. They are what, and this is something that I talk about in my book as well. I have a book out which looks at the intersection of globalization, sexuality, and technology in contemporary India. I think the defining trend is it's not just bringing global influences. It's taking the best of global influences, but then really choosing what fits in within a very, very local matrix. And that's what, whether it's the magazine, whether it's the people whom I interviewed for my book, whether it's, all these other people who are coming in are realizing that to be Indian means being local, both global and local. And if you can crack that, and if you can do it in a, I think in a value-based manner, then you have much more chance of succeeding.
Great. Thanks a lot, Parmesh.
Yeah.